school principal, Mr. Chimangazo Samuel Benedict Daswa, who shall be the first ever South African to be referred to as a blessed martyr. He shall now be known as Blessed Benedict Daswa. The beatification ceremony will take place on Sunday, the 13th September 2015 in Thohoyandou, Limpopo. Daswa was beaten, stoned, and burned to death for his beliefs on the 2nd February 1990, the very date on which the apartheid regime announced the release of President Nelson Mandela and the unbanning of political organizations. We congratulate the Catholic in Southern Africa for the first time ever. Ladies and gentlemen, returning to the matters at hand, in 2011, when we established the PICC, the economy was recovering from the contraction caused by the 2008 global financial crisis that had rapidly spread across the world. Our national infrastructure plan was introduced as means of boosting jobs and expanding the foundations of long-term growth. Since that decision, we have made steady strides with infrastructure investment and public employment programs. Today, the economy is facing renewed headwinds caused by a decline in the prices of mineral products that we export. It is also caused by a glut of steel in global markets and weakening demand in Asia, compounded by still weak growth in Europe. It is for this reason, at this meeting, as the three spheres of government, we undertook a serious discussion of our infrastructure program to see where we should remove bottlenecks and speed up delivery. The PICC Council took note of the 9-point plan that was announced in the February State of the Nation address. In the recent Cabinet Lekgotla, we identified a number of actions to strengthen this foundation. We identified a 120-day period to fast-track our work and enable blockages to be overcome. This focus on jobs, education, energy, transport logistics, water and sanitation, housing, broadband, health infrastructure, industrialization, and state capacity. We received the first of 3 reports on implementation. One example of this is the progress with increasing our power supply. 2 weeks ago, we launched Unit 6 of Medupi Power Station. In addition, the Kucha wind farm in the Eastern Cape also has now been completed and was officially opened last week. The 2 billion rand Kucha project will provide renewable energy that can power as many as 50,000 houses, adding to the large new energy capacity that solar and wind energy has brought to the grid. We also launched the War on Leaks Maintenance Program in Nelson Mandela Bay, which will employ 15,000 young people over the next 3 years to fix leaking pipes and taps, which cost the country 7 billion rand a year. While we can celebrate some of the successes with infrastructure, I requested the PICC Council to concentrate on what we still need to do. Some of the areas of work that we need to focus on are the following: the need to ensure the completion of the remaining Medupi power station units and the other 2 power stations, Kusile and Ingula, on deadline. This is important because energy remains a major obstacle to economic growth. We must find solutions to shortage of student accommodation given the frustration of many of our young people nationwide. We should speed up the refurbishment of hospitals and schools. We must revitalize the program of installing solar water geysers. The departments were directed to obtain the funding necessary to move the country towards the target of 1.4 million geysers in the next 4 years. These are just a few of the projects which will help us improve social and economic infrastructure while also providing jobs, skills, training, and opportunities for small businesses. Cabinet has also improved a bill that has now been submitted to Parliament. It will introduce changes to 2 laws, the Criminal Procedures Act and the Criminal Law Amendment Act. The bill seeks, amongst other provisions, to regulate bail in respect of essential infrastructure-related offenses and introduce minimum sentences. This will help us to act against the theft of copper cables and metal from the country's infrastructure program, which seriously affects the supply of electricity, which results in disruptions to train schedules and the supply of water, among others. This means that disrupting infrastructure will no longer be regarded as a minor crime or simply as theft or vandalism. It is a serious economic offense. Importantly, the Council meeting today introduced a new tone of focus, urgency, and indicated implementation. Let me repeat this. Importantly, the Council meeting today introduced a new tone of focus, urgency, and dedicated implementation. We agreed that we need to improve the pace in order to meet the targets we have set ourselves. If we do that, the infrastructure program will yield the desired results. I began by saying that today is a historic day for the country because of the major discoveries at Maropeng. Tomorrow is also a historic day in the history of our liberation struggle and the relations between South Africa and Mozambique. I traveled to Maputo this afternoon and will tomorrow join His Excellency President Philip Nyusi to unveil the Matola Raid Monument and Interpretive Center in memory of the South African freedom fighters and one Mozambican national who were brutally massacred by apartheid forces in the country in 1981. We will be accompanied by their family members. In their memory, we celebrate the fact that the country they fought for and for whose freedom they died is progressing steadily to build the society they envisaged. Difficulties arise from time to time, such as the impact of the current global economic downturn and the length of time it is taking to reverse the legacy of apartheid. However, working together as South Africans, we continue the journey to achieve our mission of building a truly united, non-sexist, non-racial, and prosperous South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President. We'll take a few questions from the ladies and gentlemen of the media. Good afternoon to you. Can we start with you, sir?
Hi, good day, Mr. President. Paul Vicchiato from Bloomberg. In your discussions on infrastructure, have you discussed the nuclear build program? If so, on the timeline to award a contract sometime next year is on track? If you could just tell us about that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No, we did not discuss the details of the nuclear program. I think it was mentioned in passing as we were talking about energy, particularly clean energy. It's part of the energy mix kind of a program. We did not discuss it as a specific issue. We discussed it in the overall situation of energy. But the work is going on a number of areas of energy. For an example, the wind, the sun, whatever, as well as this one. They are developing in different areas. Some of the projects will be opened of some of the aspects of the energy mix. So the nuclear one is under process, being worked on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I shall go to you, ma'am. Please introduce yourself.
President, in your discussion, have you perhaps looked at how much has it cost these service delivery approved tests now that turn violent and infrastructure is damaged? Have you looked at how much has it cost? How much would it cost to refurbish buildings, municipal buildings, government buildings that have been destroyed through this service delivery protest?
Well, we did not necessarily calculate the amount so far. We touched upon the protests in passing in the direction that the challenges that face the globe today, which has undermined the growth of the economy, is impacting in different ways, as well as in South Africa as well, because the economy is not performing at its level, at its best. And therefore that will tend to cause a problem that will create more unemployment and many other challenges. Some of these are not just protests only, are workers striking, who are working, who are not necessarily unemployed, who are working, who tend to be very violent. So it's not as if the violence of the protests emerges from one source only, which tells you that there is a challenge we are faced with as South Africans of a kind of a violent culture which we carried from apartheid. Because apartheid was a violent society and therefore produced a counter-violence and produced a psychology to people to fight. Whenever you're fighting authority, you must be violent. I think all of us, we did not work to take away that kind of violence culture from our people. And this is what we need to do as we move forward. So much as unemployment and other factors are there, but there is just a culture that we need to deal with as a country, which we did not deal with when we got into our freedom. And that's why people are, even today, they still do what they would be doing during the time when they faced with a violent kind of system. So it's a matter we are looking at how to handle that matter. It's going to be with us for quite some time. You see, if just to illustrate and undermine the point I'm making, if you are protesting for delivery, it doesn't make good sense that you destroy the very things that are being delivered. You are protesting, you burn a library, you break shops, you do everything, and yet you say we want delivery. So it doesn't make a difference. It just tells you the culture that our people are in, which you need to deal with from a point of view of all of us. That's something we need to discourage, because it doesn't help. You are angry for protests, but you then burn your own house. What is going to happen when the protest is over? I think it tells you that there is something behind this rather than just a normal thing. After all, in other places, people do protest, but they don't do what our people will do. I think this is the carryover of the situation before.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, sir, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lester from the NCA. I'd like to talk about...
Are you from the ANC?
From the ANC.
Oh, thank you. I thought you were saying from the ANC. I said, okay. Okay.
I'd like to ask about the new legislative plans to reclassify the theft of copper and steel. We do have legislation in terms of the second-hand goods bill, which is supposed to make it more difficult when people take copper and steel, which most often comes from government infrastructure, to second-hand dealers. It's supposed to make it more difficult for them. I'd just like to know from you, do you think this existing legislation is working? And when you talk about this now being considered a serious economic crime, would it be classified in some sort of wording in terms of sabotage? What are we looking around that wording for this proposed new legislation? Thank you.
Well, I think we should wait for the legislation to come, because the legislation will be very clear what is it that we are intending to do, what has become a realistic thing. Historically, people were stealing these in a smaller scale. And I'm sure that's why it was not necessarily seen as a serious crime. What has happened now, we've noticed that it has actually become a business. People actually steal, destroy, because they want to go and sell this in a bigger scale. And that's why we've taken a decision that we now need to categorize it at a higher level, as I was explaining here. But once the bill is discussed, we will then get to know the details. How are we differentiating from the bills or the laws that existed before? The important thing is that it is at a bigger scale, and it needs, therefore, a law or a legislation that is going to deal with it at that level.
We'll take the last question. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wendell from Reuters. Just continuing on legislation, the private security amendment bill has been at your desk for some time. Is there any indication of when you are going to consent to it, or sign it, ratify it, or are there concerns and we might send it back to Parliament? And the second question, please, Mr. President, if you'll allow me, relates to the intervention of government in the mining sector. You have been playing a very active role in this for some time. Is there a sense on your side, I think if I remember correctly, you mentioned something like this in Parliament some time ago. Is there a sense now, again, given the economic situation, the commodity super cycle, that perhaps unions are, their requests are unreasonable?
The requests are?
The requests for higher salaries are unreasonable given this economic context that we find ourselves in.
You were aiming at the second question more than the first one. What did you say with the first one? Because I became very...
The first one, Mr. President, related to the private security amendment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're going to approve it or send it back.
No, that one is in the process. Is in the process of being looked at. As you know, that bill is dealing with a very complex issue, the issue of security in the country. People could look at it at different angles. For an example, it is a business, and that's how I think we looked at it earlier in the democracy. But the reality is that the security companies have grown. Now, it's not like growing a normal business. It means you have very strong armed people in a very serious sense. At times, people have been saying they're sort of a private force in the country. And you have some companies owned by foreign people. Now, the nature of the business will make us to look at it very thoroughly. Because firstly, you would not want to disadvantage business on one hand, but on the other, you would not want to hand over the security of the country to some other people. So it's not a small matter. So that's why we are processing it. We are taking time so that when we finalize it, we'll know that we've balanced these factors very well. With regard to the issue of the miners or the mining, well, we discuss this matter at a point when there is global meltdown of the economy, which in our case, in a sense, focused very much on the mining sector, which is an important sector of our economy. But also there were certain things that happened which added some negativity to the mining, and therefore made the world to focus on the mining sector in South Africa. But at the same time, around the same time, there were unprecedented kind of strikes. I think one of the strikes took something like 5 months. Quite unprecedented. So the tension between the mining companies and the organized labor was very high. We intervened at the time to address the matter and then met all the stakeholders to say, let us find a solution. And we've met a few times, and I think we've made progress. The last meeting that we had, I think the outcome was even much better than many others. In the period where we were meeting before, different sectors produced reports, different reports that had to be discussed. But the last one produced a composite report, one report, which tells you the situation is no longer like what it was before. And I think almost when people say we are committing ourselves to this, you are better placed today to say we are moving forward. And everybody is agreed that we are moving forward. So much as the industry has faced difficulties, precisely because there is now an interaction that is not very sharp in terms of disagreements. Disagreements will always be there, but the manner in which it is done is no longer like very combative one in the past. Now everybody, because ours is to say, this sector is important for the economy of the country, and we needed to deal with it with that understanding. For an example, we raised the issues with all of them being together to say, can we deal with the matters as business as usual when we are faced with the economic challenges? Should we be saying the companies must still maximize their profits even when the situation is challenging? Because the first thing they would look at is to reduce the workforce, and therefore those people are going to be unemployed, and therefore it adds another problem in the country. Shouldn't we be looking at what do we do? Should, when the season for negotiations come, the workers pitch up their demands without regard of the economy is that what we need to do? Shouldn't we, as the citizens belonging to different sectors, take into account the economic meltdown and say, how do we handle this issue? Now, if these two, for an example, one look at their profits, one look at their conditions, are disregarding the economic situation, once unemployment comes, then it becomes a problem of government. The government is said there's too much unemployment under your government, but we are not employing, we are not a union. So we come in from that point of view to say, let us look at the realistic things. What can we do so that we can move with an understanding? There are countries that have looked at the conditions of the workers, particularly mine workers, differently. And they've created the kind of conditions that are conducive for business to go on. So we are talking, and I'm sure at the right time, we'll be able to reach an understanding that will be acceptable. We can't say they will agree on everything. Otherwise, the system would have changed if that happened. But if there are disagreements, how are they handled for the sake of the economy, for the sake of the country?
Thank you very much, Mr.
President.
Mr. President, indeed, I feel very generous indeed. I will allow the gentleman to ask a question. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, President. My name is Koilan Mahobana from Business Day. Firstly, just wanted to find out if there's any progress in the way of the appointments of the National Planning Commission and whom. And secondly, I wanted to find out if there was any indication from the attendance from Gauteng on matters including human settlements and service sites. 11% of the transfers from the Department of Human Settlements were spent by the Gauteng Department of Human Settlements, which is 89% underspending, and was a huge concern when it was raised, especially looking at Ekurhuleni, which failed to spend about 520 million, which was human settlements. I just wanted to get a sense of if that was addressed by executive mayors, by anyone in the spheres when we met today. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure whether I heard you towards the end. Just repeat, just slowly.
Yes, just an indication if the issues of human settlement development and service stands with infrastructure were raised during today's meeting in Gauteng province, in Gauteng's case.
I hope I hear. No, I don't think we discussed that matter today. We didn't. The one towards the end. If I hear you very well, I can't comment on it because we did not discuss that matter. Was your question in two, or there were two? Just repeat the first part of it. Oh, Planning Commission, yes. Where the process is, that's what you're asking. Yeah, the process is ongoing. I think it is towards the end, almost. I can't say exactly if you were drawing a line, which part of the line it is. But it has moved, and I think not long you will hear the results, because I know for a fact that it has moved to a point where it is almost reaching the final stages of appointing the commissioners. But it's not an easy matter as well. People are looking at it very clearly. You need to balance the kind of commissioners. Why these? What is that you need? So you can't just fast track it without looking at the other things and balancing things very well, so that it will be a commissioner that will produce the desired results.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President. Thank you, Minister Quinty and Minister Patel. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, please allow us to take leave of His Excellency, the President and the ministers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you.